Hello, everybody. I'm Kirti Mishra from Ecociate. Today, we are starting our LED series, Local Economy Development Series, uh, with experts, thought leaders from India and abroad to give their perspective on this particular topic. COVID, everybody knows, and we have seen the impact. I don't need to talk about that. But if you look at a lot of uh, experts and thought leaders are talking about local production systems, local food systems, local entrepreneurship development, and also making communities resilient, making community empowered. So the mission is really to see that we create robust, stronger local economy. So that perhaps is the mission now. And to take this further, we have a very important guest today, uh, Dr. Parmesh Shah. He is from World Bank, the global lead for rural development, agriculture, and he has been instrumental now to see things at a height sitting in Washington, D.C. But let me tell you, he has worked extensively in India at the grassroots level to certain extent because he was instrumental in bringing real scalable changes and livelihood programs all over. So we cannot have a better person than him to start the series. He was involved in digital process. He has been involved in digital process to be integrated in Africa as a model. He has been championing the community participation approach within the bank format. He has contributed immensely, in my opinion, to talk about local with a global perspective. Dr. Parmesa is very apt and important for us. So with that, I welcome you, Dr. Parmesa, to this program. And my first question to you is, how do you see post-COVID the situation in terms of defining local economy development? We've been talking about that when we started our career in past, but that was if 1.1. Now we are talking about LED 2.0. So my first question to you is why it is important and how we need to look at this in today's context.
Thanks a lot, Kirti, and many thanks for inviting me to this series. A very timely one and absolutely relevant for the times. So, basically, when we look at COVID, what it did is that it broke the elongated supply chains which were there, and most of the times people's produce was going out and they were buying it again. So it was a the market economy was functioning in a way that you needed to get your product out to a large distance before it comes back to you again.
Absolutely.
So I think the fault lines of that kind of a approach became more evident during COVID when the supply chains got disrupted at many points of time. And so logistics got affected, and you couldn't really take your products there, and food was not considered safe, and the definition of what should be the food safety, food logistics, health, nutrition has really been relooked at in the context of COVID. So obviously there is a question of how can we make this more resilient and have multiple nodes of local economies developing there rather than have only one node of economy outside and then have very small nodes there, and they get very clearly disturbed during the COVID part. The second thing is that that this is the first time that the rural users of internet are higher than the urban users in India. So connectivity definitely is not that bad as it was assumed to be, and so which gives you a different idea about how you can develop local economies in a connected way. So I think what is different is that you want to expand the size of local economies and multiple nodes of local economies, but you want to make them more connected still. And so you could, rather than being dependent on outsiders to connect you, you could yourself take charge and be connected to the rest of the world in terms of where you take your products there and all that. Institutions also are important. I think we saw this time that a lot of places where good institutions existed, whether they were FPOs or SHGs and federation, they took charge. They didn't wait for the government to come in and help them out. And I think you could see clearly where you had good institutional mechanisms they really developed their own local economic nodes and tried to access the markets in a different way, taking advantage of the digital technologies and others there. So I would say that the basic change is that the local economy and augmentation of the local value, I think, is now more important. You need more resilient nodes of economic activity as opposed to having one central node of economic activity. So I think the COVID has thrown open the developmental model which we have right now, and change it upside down, that people can create loops of local economy which are more resilient and are also more in size as well as more connected.
Lovely. So, as you saying, the model, the definition or the approach need to be looked at. We in past 20 years back, I started with microfinance to micro enterprise as a model, and that point of time we are talking more about local economy. But post that, we all appreciated the role of private sector, market linkage, and all that. And last 5 to 10 years, a lot of opportunities came around linking the local products to the global market. So global phenomena started becoming important, and we got into that. But now this broken supply chain and those kind of things have created bit of opened up a lot of questions within this framework. While we are going towards the global value chains, suddenly we have moved to local and making local robust. In that context, how do you see the opportunities, as you said, from the IT point of view? There you saw a lot of things. Community are becoming important. We have FPOs and SHGs. But if we take the opportunity part a little further, where we need to invest in terms of making the real change?
I think important thing is to understand that all these efforts which we have done in the past have been not at enough scale. Uh, they were definitely, they were better than what was there, but they didn't reach a stage of optimality. And food also, if we look at what is neglected in India, is the whole processing part completely.
Yeah.
So microprocessing really is where value gets added. You take the case of Thailand.
Yes.
It also grows mango. India also grows mango, in fact, larger than Thailand. But Thailand, you have almost like 56 products being produced in all parts of Thailand, from which type of mango candy to dried mango and all that. And that's all available as consumer products in almost every village or every shop in Thailand that gets sold. It's an exemplifier that you cannot create value out of the narrow production and a very narrow processing. You
Absolutely.
need to create the whole, what I would call is a micro enterprise revolution
Mm-hmm.
and a SME revolution
Mm-hmm.
around processing, value addition, trading, and create more enterprise value out of what is happening out of food. So food is a very important sector because that's the sector which I think the rural areas would benefit more. But food not in the way that you have only production happening, that too on small 2 acre farms, which is never going to be really transformational in that way. So what do you do off farm and non farm? In addition to on farm, has to be exponentially expanded. And then once you have the products, then you need to link it up with the market, basically.
Okay.
But you cannot take very raw material all the time at a very lower value and keep on taking it and expect it to create local economies. Local economies have to be expanded and elongated in terms of food. Now, not only food, what you look at nutrition also. I think COVID has shown that everyone is looking at immunity foods. And for a long time, I think our communities had a lot of traditional immunity foods,
Mm-hmm.
but they were, rubbished for a long time because they were you got a lot of these everything coming from the allopathic side and all the time. So you didn't build that whole indigenous nutrition. I would call it. I don't call it industry, but market.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to build that into an opportunity. I think even Ramdev has converted it into an opportunity, but I'm not sure that's going to multiple nodes, that
Mm-hmm.
you have any FPO working on nutrition and all that kind of thing, creating those health foods, including processing, marketing, and things like that. So I think you need to think of these drivers, processing, nutrition, and convert them into local economic opportunities. I see that is a very, very important part of it. Then it would be other things like livability, and ecotourism, health tourism, all those things have to be packaged and converted into opportunity. So there is a health driver, there's a nutrition driver, and there's a processing driver. I think we need to increase the number of nodes of opportunity, but not do it in a way that it's like a government program in which we are dumping things on them. I think it has to be converted into an value chain and entrepreneurial model. So I think it is about creating more local value chains and local products and local enterprises and increasing the density and intensity of that effort.
Now the question is, you saying that we need to create nodes. I see in your argument two things. One, you talked about FPO slightly in terms of aggregation and all that, and you also talking about making these nodes more robust and upward in the value chain. So how we really then nurture FPOs and rural enterprises in that sense, because you're talking about converting this opportunity, and then it has to be entrepreneurs at the local level. So FPOs and the local entrepreneurs, what you think as a roadmap in terms of either government or CSOs or anybody who is really looking at a scalable solution, what we need to do at this juncture?
So clearly, we have to learn from what has worked in India in the past. The biggest place where we created multiple nodes of rural economy was Amul, but linked with market, clearly. So, but there is something going on at multiple places at a point of time where you were converting animal husbandry into a viable enterprise for people from 2 cattle to 10 cattle to 15 cattle. You can clearly say that. So, personally, I feel that this cannot be done in the way scheme driven development. I call it SDD, scheme driven development, as we are quite used to in the government. I think these things have to be done in a mission mode. And I think the time to think about incubation and acceleration.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Need to be, huh?
Can you explain that a little bit? That's an interesting idea.
Yes. So I think we need a top class incubator for FPOs now. It's like there are a lot of FPOs which have good leadership, medium leadership, poor leadership. Good capacity, medium capacity, poor capacity. Our strike rate of creating large number of good FPOs has been poor because it's been done in a supply driven model. Absolutely. In which you don't nurture the institutions well. Right. Now, what was Amul? Amul was an incubator of cooperatives at that point of time, if you look at it that way. And yes. So I think we need to create a what you call it an FPO mission, I would say. It cannot be done by announcing 10,000 FPOs. Suddenly, and overnight, you will have 10,000 FPOs. Now, you can look at NDV, tried to create producer company model, had dairy services. They could also do only 20, 30. It's clear. It's not like it needs a very different approach. Luckily, in our country, we have NGOs which have done good work. We have a lot of FPO promotion organizations which have good work. You have these livelihood missions which are there. But I think we need to bring them together with a focused mission and create multiple incubators for FPOs. I think if we can nurture them for 2 years and have good quality mentors, coaches available to guide each FPO. The second part would be that it won't be good to do FPOs in the same way as we did in 60s with Amul or 70s with Amul. I think you have a big opportunity of having a digital thing. And now in Africa, what we are trying to do, we are digitizing all the FPOs and helping them digitize their operations. And then suddenly they are able to interact with the whole world. And so you cannot keep on organizing farmers in a traditional way. You need to organize farmers and aggregate them by knowing about their production and going and looking at their animals. So we have lots of, good startups like DigiCow in Kenya, which is now bringing all the veterinary providers under a digital platform so that everyone gets, a veterinarian at your doorstep in 1 hour. Now, these are the models which you require now, take the advantage of digitization, digital, and then incubation. So I would say that if we combine this and have a very focused effort in creating a good proof of concept to have good 1,000 FPOs. Second thing would be not to start from scratch.
Mhm.
Ask an existing FPO to add 500 members, and announce an inclusion grant. And this is what we are doing right now in
Yeah.
Kenya. It's like we have
Yes.
asked every good FPO to add 500 more members and give them additional resources to mobilize. So I personally feel that rather than have too many people, you should have multiple nodes of it. Good FPOs, you should have a model. Good NGOs who have already done it, you should have it. And then you should have an incubator, dedicated incubator and a mission to really work on that. Otherwise, the danger is that this will be done in a supply driven manner, and the mortality rate of starting with 10,000, you will be left with only 1,000. So I think build on what you have, expand it, and
Mhm.
create proof of concept of a larger scale. So if we take just 2,000 FPOs in the beginning and
Mhm.
really create a good incubator model, then we could accelerate it after that. So if
Yeah.
you don't incubate and start accelerating before you have incubated, you are in serious trouble.
And I think today I heard like NABARD has got e-Shakti project awarded. That means our systems are gearing towards becoming digital in terms of its management. So that's a good sign that we can, what you are suggesting can be done, because we have seen the early signs. But as you're saying, it's just not a number game. We have to really see that processes are taken care. The business side of the story need to be taken up to the scale. So do you think the reform, I don't want to get into the reform part of it, but the way government is now talking about local infrastructure fund, let's say. So from that's a interesting avenue for the FPOs to really leverage, even for the local entrepreneurs. So in that context, do you see the emerging reforms and what you are suggesting from rural entrepreneurs or FPOs? This is the right time really to take advantage of this.
Absolutely. No, I think the reforms are in the right direction because they are allowing choice for a lot of FPOs to enter into relationships with market providers on their own.
Mhm.
But infrastructure is a very big thing which we need to work on basically because in Latin America we work on something called productive alliance in which a lot of farmer groups which are short of infrastructure apply for those grants, matching grants, in which they put in some money and then that is matched by our programs.
Mhm.
But they have to do it in collaboration with a market opportunity, basically, not do independently. So again, my problem is that if infrastructure gets created
Mhm.
without having the market opportunity, then you are going to have a lot of infrastructure which will be like a white elephant basically
Mhm.
sitting there. Clearly, storage, warehouse, India completely needs that. I know of a lot of farmers who do so well on production but completely fumble when you don't have the connecting, I call it connectivity infrastructure, warehouses, storage, and then the innovations like warehouse receipt and all, the financial innovations could come in. So I would say that we need a good kind of mechanism by which each FPO can produce a kind of gap financing infrastructure plan. We could equip them with that. So first is to create infrastructure where FPOs already exist, because
Yes.
you could create infrastructure at places where FPOs are not there, and then that infrastructure will have no value.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
also, if there are more places where NCDAX, National Collateral Management Agency, so give you an example.
Mhm.
So when we created this producer company in Khagaria, and Purnia,
Yeah,
maize producer company, Aranya, which has got a lot of awards from all the places,
I know.
and we
Yes.
tried to get them linked with the commodity exchange. The biggest issue was there was no place where they could store, and so National Collateral Management Agency came and started investing in silos first time. You know, they didn't invest in silos where demand didn't exist.
Yeah.
So the producer company already had built a business model, and then the silos came in, and
Mhm.
then you could really place your silos there, take advantage of the modern product like warehouse receipt much easily. But the collateral agency also came in and invested where you had a good demand built up.
Okay.
So to me, the trick in this is to integrate
Mhm.
places where already FPOs exist, give them a very good module of
Mhm.
training in which they could look at what infrastructure they would need in collaboration with some a team or experts or something which would help them do that, and then bring in a lot of people who do warehousing and all that kind of thing to work
So,
with them.
so in a
Not create an infrastructure which is open-ended and without any thinking about market. It should be clearly linked with X number of farmers, X amount of market opportunity, and then you create infrastructure. Without that, infrastructure gets created in our country many times,
Mhm.
but it has not had that kind of an impact. The trick would be to do it in a more integrated way.
Fantastic. So if you integrate the local aspects, the dynamics, as you're suggesting, and make it really workable at the ground level, then my obvious question is that would then drive the real partnership. I would not say transactions, but partnership with private sector, and to some extent, the social entrepreneurs would also start looking that integrated, grounded, strong foundation as a foundation to really leverage. So both private sector and social entrepreneurs can actually take advantage of this, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely, it's a golden opportunity, and I think we should look at that. So I think it's not only social enterprise NGOs which have invested a lot in that, and we know about Pradhan and other people who have worked on this
Yes.
for a long time. So I think the way you have to expand this is, like I would call it, looking at the organic nodes where this is happening and expand in concentric circles around that,
Okay.
basically. Similarly, the social entrepreneurs, similarly, the other startups, and also even private companies. So like their private companies should just, even if they do it under the CSR window, they should take up this effort and show the proof of concept that if they can link 10% of their current turnover with
Mhm.
these efforts and bringing this together, because expertise will be required. And
Mhm.
expertise necessarily will not be there at one place, it will be at many places. So I would say that we should link, say 100 FPOs or 10 FPOs with one social enterprise,
Yeah.
and really the role of the social enterprise is then to incubate and develop a business model out of it, because eventually this will not sustain if even local economic development will have to develop a business model. It can't be done. You may need some public good investment, as the government is rightly doing it. That
Mhm.
public good investment is to catalyze eventually some kind of a sustainable business model. And unfortunately, the expertise is not always with the government, and that's why we need to announce bright. So I would invest in a two types of things. One
Mhm.
is a young professional program exclusively for these FPOs,
Mhm.
and also a social enterprise platform of startups exclusive for them, and give them 1,000 FPOs as a kind of a ballpark thing to work on. And I
Okay.
think from that will emerge very interesting models which are there. Apart from that, wherever government and NGOs have capacity, ask them to expand in concentric circles around the area where they have. Because you need knowledge about farmers, you
Mhm.
need knowledge about value chains, you need knowledge about economic mobilization. And if you start doing it in a point, any other geography, without having that understanding, there's no comparative advantage of doing that. The private sector, even when they buy milk from a place or something, they are buying it from just 40, 50 locations where they have worked for a longer time. So I think how do you open multiple nodes,
That would be
and which will
critical.
be the social enterprises, startups,
Yeah.
and then I would even go to the extent that even open a node for digital startups to diversify.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I
I was
believe
supposed to
now
come to
I'm
that.
globally working with thousands of startups, and I find that a lot of guys who started with technology
Mhm.
are able to do this also quite well,
Okay.
because they believe in doing something for the local economy, doing something for food. So I think our traditional way of looking at just getting people who are, from traditionally from the sector, we need
Mhm.
to open this out a little and
Lovely.
get bright people from all places come and work on this agenda.
So, what I got from you, the framework of local economic development has a community structure you articulated so well. You brought in the government side in terms of public investment into it, making the real usage more pertinent to that local condition. You talked about CSOs, you talked about social enterprises. You also see if we do it, then private sector and the linkage or the relationship can be very robust. So that is something I think as a framework is emerging. But At the end, I would ask you what three things you would suggest to government, not only government of India, as we know agriculture and many of these things are at the state level. What are your suggestions to them so that we make local economy really robust and stronger? Three suggestions from you.
So government should invest in building an ecosystem. What I'm telling you is an ecosystem.
Yeah.
If you don't create an ecosystem and you have a scheme and you just announce something and then want to monitor only the utilization by finances, you will not be able to get the thing going. So I think it is about thinking about that your objective is to build an ecosystem where multiple people can come and participate in this endeavor,
Yeah.
basically. So I would say that they really should be setting up a dedicated kind of mission to build the ecosystem, as opposed to just saying you spend this much, you spend this much, and give us proposals, we will some fund it. So I think that is the part where government has to do it, and government has experience of doing this. Government has set up good missions in the past where they have nurtured this. So don't take the investment route from day one, and don't think that 10,000 will be done in year one. That's a wrong way of thinking about it. You need to get viable, and good quality efforts scaled up, as opposed to anyone, anywhere. You create a digital platform, people start applying, and then you don't do it. So ecosystem. Second is invest in human resources for this. Very, very important.
Yeah.
Get an architecture going, young professionals,
Yes.
private sector advisory groups, and mentors, coaches. So the mentality has to be like you are creating a new kind of a startup
Architecture.
or an ecosystem. That mentality government has to have. Then that's why its policy also has to be that way. And I think you start with states which already have, that kind of thinking, and scale up the model there. All the
Certain
efforts in our
states like
country
they
have been
have
initially
incubation
scaled up. And
programs.
yeah, already have efforts there. I'm not saying that you don't have to start everywhere. You
Yeah.
can start somewhere, small scale everywhere, but human resources, ecosystem, and then bring in the hardware investment into infrastructure and whatever you are talking about. So the danger would be that you could be obsessed with 10,000 FPOs and 1 lakh crore infrastructure fund, and the obsession would be to create the numbers, as opposed to creating the ecosystem, creating a platform, building the foundation of a system which will be scaled up and longer. So sequencing is very important, and but the government should also then use the whole. We have now about 1,600 tech startups in the country already.
Yeah.
They are currently struggling to make linkages with the government.
Yes.
So you need to create a platform where a lot of people can come in and start bringing their solutions. So I would launch a first kind of a solutions challenge for this whole activity, and
Interesting.
really pick the 100 best, you
Great.
know, out of the lot. They may come from NGOs, they may come from FPOs and all.
Yeah.
And then you really immerse other people who want to do this compulsorily around these innovations,
Yeah.
and then only you scale up, rather than if you're not learned what is working and what is not working and you start scaling up. What are you scaling up? You need to learn. Second would be to set up a, I would call it as an FPO observatory, top notch system which looks at data using AI, machine learning, everything, modern things, and gives us system performance of various FPOs very quickly. And then once you know which one is working, then have a lot of qualitative assessments of why it is working and develop a whole case study method. I think we need to develop a top-notch course somewhere in partnership with a particular institution where you take
Right.
these 100 examples and let everyone go through that module. Let everyone go through that module, and then work on these incubators. I personally feel that you need an incubator in every block of the country.
Lovely.
Basically, I think we need.
It's a music to my ear. They really
Yeah, it
very
will
good
fail
suggestion.
sometime. Some of them will fail, but if you have not done that, you will not learn enough. If you do it
Yes.
on scale
Hmm.
and you have worked on at least 500 blocks in the country, 500 incubators, then you will know what will happen and who will run these incubators. I think you could run them in ITIs, KVKs, all those places, but attached with social entrepreneurs, young professionals, mentors, and groups like that. So I think we need to invest in really building the ecosystem
Lovely.
for local economic development. Without ecosystem, local economic development will become another slogan. We will reach up to some. We have reached. I'm not denying that. We have still many nodes in India,
Mm-hmm.
but considering the country of such large size
Mm-hmm.
and 546,000 villages,
Mm-hmm.
you need to have more nodes.
Yes.
Currently, the rate of incubation and innovation is hardly 4% or 5% of
Yeah.
the total. So we need to increase the intensity, density, quality. And I think intensity, density, quality makes an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Ecosystem has come from ecology. You
Yes.
create ecological conditions
Yes.
for plants to flourish. And
Absolutely.
how do you do that? By concentrating soil, you know, other variables, moisture, everything at one place. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where that plant grows much better than any other plant around.
Right.
So I
Right.
think we have to create this node of, I think ecosystem is the main thing we need to do it in. Government should not be in the business of pure investment. They should
Mm-hmm.
be in the business of facilitating
Mm-hmm.
development of an ecosystem. And for this, they need to partner with other agencies to create that ecosystem. They cannot do this in a kind of a supply driven kind of a manner. So mission mode, very clearly take it in a mission mode, get bright people to come and work with you, strike partnerships with NGOs, social enterprises, startups, digital ones, and some of the key private sector, which things like that, I talk to foundations and all the time,
Mm-hmm.
corporate foundations and all. They want to do it, but there's no enabling structure to really make this happen. There's no learning which is
Yeah.
happening continuously around that. There are
Yeah.
a lot of small efforts, but
Mm-hmm.
they are not integrated into a large scale.
Yeah. I think what you essentially saying is while government is there, we need to bring these best practices. In fact, from IT to all kinds of processes to entrepreneurship development to incubation to ensure that we create our local systems much more robust, much more stronger, and that perhaps would propel the economy further. So I take that, of course, out of many things, I take that as a learning, and I think the donor community, or in that sense the development sector community, should come in to help government systems to ensure these processes gets into the system, and that may really start the real change happening, as you're saying. So thank you very much for this interaction, and I really think this is very insightful, and for particularly for development practitioners like us, we would take each of your sentence very seriously and try to see that we replicate or translate it on the ground level. Thank you very much for your time, and from Ecociate side, we really thank you for this interaction.
Thanks a lot, Kirti, for having me. And I hope this conversation when with other people also leads to more thinking and we develop something good out of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye.